The morning sun cast long shadows across the barren mountains of Afghanistan. Rain had fallen during the night, leaving the air crisp and clean. A lone figure lay motionless on a rocky outcrop, her body barely distinguishable from the surrounding terrain. Through the scope of her M2010 enhanced sniper rifle, Kira Falcon Harlow watched her target moving through the compound below. 72 hours. No sleep. No movement. Just the rhythm of her breathing and the slow, steady beat of her heart. The man in her crosshairs was responsible for the deaths of 37 American soldiers. His network had orchestrated 6 deadly bombings across 3 provinces. Intelligence had tracked him for months, but he'd remained elusive until now. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger, her breathing controlled and measured. The radio at her side crackled to life. "Falcon, mission is scrubbed. Russian special forces detected in your sector. Withdraw immediately. I repeat, withdraw immediately." Kira remained perfectly still, her focus unwavering. The target moved into an open space between buildings. A perfect shot. The radio continued to buzz with urgent commands, but they seemed distant, unimportant. She drew a slow breath, feeling the weight of the decision. Wind speed, 7 mph, left to right. Distance, 1875 meters. Temperature, 84 degrees. Humidity, 27%. Her mind calculated the variables automatically, adjusting her aim with microscopic precision. The crack of the rifle echoed across the valley, the sound reverberating off the distant mountains. Through her scope, Kira watched her target crumple to the ground. 1 shot. 1 kill. The longest confirmed kill by a female American sniper in military history. 13 years earlier, the Montana landscape stretched out before 28-year-old Kira Harlow as she drove along the dusty road leading to her childhood home. After 6 years in the Marine Corps, the rolling hills and open sky felt both familiar and strange. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her eyes continuously scanned her surroundings, a habit formed during her time in combat zones. The family ranch appeared smaller than she remembered. The barn needed a new coat of paint. The fence along the south pasture was sagging, and her father's old truck sat idle beside the house. Something was wrong. John Harlow's truck was never idle during daylight hours. Before Kira could reach the front door, it swung open and her mother appeared. Margaret Harlow looked older than Kira remembered, with new lines of worry etched across her weathered face. "Kira," she said, moving forward to embrace her daughter. "Thank God you're here." "What's going on, Mom? Where's Dad?" Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "He's inside. The doctor says it's just a matter of days now." Kira felt the words like a physical blow. Her father had mentioned some health issues in their last few phone calls, but nothing that suggested anything this serious. She followed her mother into the house, stepping into the familiar living room, now transformed with a hospital bed where her father lay. John Harlow had always been a powerful presence, a former Green Beret who had fought in Vietnam before building this ranch from nothing. Now he looked diminished, his once strong frame shrunken beneath the sheets. When his eyes opened and found Kira, however, a spark of his old strength returned. "There's my girl," he said, his voice raspy but determined. "Come closer." Kira moved to his bedside, taking his weathered hand in hers. The calluses remained, even as the strength had faded. "Dad, why didn't you tell me how bad it was? What good would that have done? You had your duties." His grip tightened briefly. "But now I need you to take on a different responsibility." Over the next hour, John explained the situation. The heart condition he'd been managing for years had rapidly deteriorated. The medical bills had piled up, forcing him to take loans against the ranch. The bank was threatening foreclosure, and her brother Michael needed expensive heart surgery that their insurance wouldn't cover. "This land can still provide for this family," John said firmly, "but it needs someone strong to run it. Your brother is smart, but he's not a fighter like you." "Dad, I don't know anything about running a ranch." "You know horses, you know people. The rest you can learn." He squeezed her hand again. "Promise me, Kira. Promise me you'll keep this family together." Looking into her father's eyes, Kira couldn't refuse. "I promise, Dad. I'll take care of everything." 3 days later, John Harlow died peacefully with his family gathered around him. The funeral was held at the small local church where Kira had spent countless Sundays as a child. The attendance surprised her, with people from all over the county coming to pay their respects to the rancher who had helped so many of them over the years. As the service concluded and people began to disperse, Kira noticed a tall, distinguished man in a military uniform approaching her. His silver hair and weathered face spoke of decades of service. "Kira Harlow," he said, extending his hand. "Colonel William Hayes. I served with your father in Vietnam." "Thank you for coming, sir. It means a lot." Hayes nodded, his eyes scanning the crowd. "Is there somewhere we could talk privately for a few minutes?" Curious, Kira led him away from the dispersing mourners toward a quiet corner of the cemetery. The sun beat down mercilessly, reflecting off the polished headstones. "Your father was more than just another soldier," Hayes began. "He was part of a specialized unit during the Cold War. We called ourselves the Ghost Hunters." Kira's confusion must have shown on her face. "After Vietnam, your father was recruited for a highly classified program. We tracked and eliminated Soviet assassins operating on American soil and in allied countries. Your father was one of our best." "My father was a rancher," Kira said, struggling to reconcile this information with the man she'd known all her life. Hayes reached into his pocket and handed her a sealed envelope. "John left this with me years ago, with instructions to give it to you if something happened to him." The envelope felt heavy in her hands. Her name was written on the front in her father's familiar handwriting. "I'll leave you to read it," Hayes said. "But afterward, I'd like to discuss an opportunity with you. Something your father would have wanted you to consider." As Hayes walked away, Kira opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a letter and a small key. "My dearest Kira, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. There are truths I couldn't share while alive, dangers that might have followed me home. The life I built here, the man you knew as your father, was only part of who I was. Before the ranch, before your mother, I served in a unit that doesn't exist in any official record. We hunted the hunters, tracked the men Moscow sent to kill our people. I was good at it, too good. In 1978, I eliminated a high-value target in Berlin, a KGB assassin named Volkov. His son swore vengeance. The key enclosed opens a hidden compartment in the attic floorboards. My journals are there. They contain techniques and knowledge not taught in any military school. They may save your life someday. Hayes will approach you. Listen to what he has to offer. The skills you possess: patience, observation, precision. These are rare gifts. I've watched you develop them since childhood. You see more than others. You always have. Whatever you decide, know that I am proud of you, and I love you more than words can say." Dad Kira stood in stunned silence, the letter clutched in her hand. The father she thought she knew, the simple rancher and Vietnam veteran, had led a double life as an elite operative hunting Soviet assassins. It seemed impossible, yet something deep inside her recognized the truth of it. Later that evening, as she sat on the porch of the family home, she heard the sound of approaching footsteps. Looking up, she saw her elderly neighbor George Parker, making his way carefully up the path. At 78, Parker moved more slowly than he once had, but still carried himself with the dignity and quiet confidence that had impressed Kira since childhood. A Korean War veteran and former sniper, he had taught Kira to hunt in the hills behind their houses when she was just 9 years old. She'd been a natural with a rifle, earning Parker's rare praise and her father's proud smile. "Evening, Kira," he said, settling into the chair beside her. "Quite a day." Yes, it was. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the Montana sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. "Your father was proud of you," Parker finally said. "Every time you called home, he'd come over the next day to tell me what you were up to." Kira smiled faintly. "He never told me that." "Not his way." Parker adjusted his position slightly. "I knew your father before he bought this place. We served together, though not in the same unit. He saved my life once, in 71. Did he ever tell you that story?" She shook her head. "We were pinned down outside a village near the Cambodian border. John crawled 200 yards through open terrain, in broad daylight, to reach an overlook. Laid there for 6 hours without moving, then took out 3 enemy gunners with 3 shots. Impossible shooting. Parker's eyes grew distant with the memory. That wasn't just skill. That was something else. Something you inherited. Kira looked at him sharply. You knew? About his other work? Parker nodded slowly. Some things, not all. I know he was good at finding people who didn't want to be found. And I know he taught you more than just how to hunt deer. She thought about the countless hours her father had spent teaching her to track animals, to read the wind, to remain perfectly still for hours on end. Skills that had seemed like simple hunting lessons, but now took on a different meaning. Colonel Hayes made me an offer today, she said quietly. Some kind of special training program. And you're wondering what your father would want you to do. The ranch is in trouble. Michael needs surgery. I made a promise. Parker leaned forward slightly. Sometimes to keep a promise, you have to take an unexpected path. He stood slowly. Your father wanted security for this family. Think about which path truly offers that. The next morning, Kira climbed into the attic with the key from her father's letter. In the far corner, beneath a loose floorboard, she found a metal lockbox. Inside were several leather-bound journals and a collection of old photographs. She spent hours reading her father's accounts of missions across Europe during the height of the Cold War. The writing was detailed, methodical. Operational techniques, observation methods, psychological insights into target behavior patterns. One journal documented a 10-day surveillance operation in Berlin, tracking a Soviet assassin through the divided city. Her father had remained in one position for nearly 3 days without moving, observing his target's patterns before taking the shot. That afternoon, she called the number Hayes had given her. 4 weeks later, Kira stepped out of a military transport at a secluded training facility near Fort Bragg, North Carolina. 24 men of various builds and backgrounds stood in loose formation. Most were physically imposing, the result of years of intense training and preparation. All had been selected from elite military units, Delta Force, Rangers, SEALs. She was the only woman. A rugged-looking man in his 50s approached the group, his weathered face suggesting years of sun exposure and hard living. The candidates immediately fell silent, recognizing authority when they saw it. Welcome to Ghost Protocol Training, he announced, his voice carrying easily across the assembled candidates. I'm Lieutenant Colonel James Carter. For the next 6 months, I will be your primary instructor, your worst nightmare, and your only hope of succeeding in this program. Carter paced slowly before them. Look around you. Statistically, only about 15% of you will complete this training. That's not a threat. It's a fact. His gaze swept across the candidates, lingering with obvious disapproval on Kira. Some of you might be wondering about the unusual composition of this class, he continued, his tone making clear his own skepticism. Let me be crystal clear. Politics and diversity initiatives have no place in combat operations. If you're here, you'd better prove you belong here. The introduction continued with explanations of the training schedule, expectations, and immediate assignments. As the group dispersed to their designated quarters, Kira found herself walking alongside a tall, broad-shouldered man who had introduced himself as Marcus Cooper. Army Rangers, Afghanistan, and Iraq, he said by way of introduction. You're Harlow, right? Marines? She nodded. Scout sniper, 2 tours in Iraq, 1 in Afghanistan. Impressive. Not many women make it through sniper school. Before their conversation could continue, another candidate stepped into their path. He was slightly shorter than Cooper, but moved with the confident swagger of someone used to authority. Victor Reynolds, he said, extending his hand to Cooper while pointedly ignoring Kira. West Point, Delta Force. Cooper shook his hand somewhat reluctantly. Good to meet you. This is Harlow. She was just... I know who she is, Reynolds interrupted, finally glancing at Kira with undisguised skepticism. My father is General Reynolds, Deputy Commander of Special Operations Command. He mentioned there was a social experiment being conducted with this training class. Kira met his gaze steadily. Is that what he called it? What else would you call putting a woman in ghost protocol training? Reynolds smirked. No offense, but there are physical standards that exist for a reason. No offense taken, Kira replied calmly. I guess we'll see if I meet those standards. As Reynolds walked away, Cooper shook his head. Don't mind him. Some guys feel threatened by change. I'm used to it, Kira said, continuing toward the barracks. What she didn't mention was the flicker of recognition she'd felt upon seeing Reynolds. They had crossed paths briefly in Iraq in 2011, during a joint operation between Marine Scout snipers and Delta Force. She'd been positioned as Overwatch while Reynolds' team executed a hostage rescue. When a young insurgent appeared with what looked like a suicide vest, Reynolds had hesitated. Kira hadn't. Her shot had saved the team, but Reynolds had never acknowledged it in his report. The first week of training assessed the candidate's basic physical fitness and set baselines for improvement. Running, swimming, obstacle courses, and strength evaluations filled each day from before dawn until well after sunset. Kira performed well in the endurance events, particularly the long-distance running and swimming. Her smaller size was a disadvantage in pure strength exercises, but she compensated with perfect technique and unwavering determination. Reynolds, meanwhile, excelled in nearly every physical challenge. His athletic background and obvious preparation for the program made him a standout performer. He made sure everyone knew it too, frequently commenting on the performance of others, particularly Kira's. On the fifth day, the candidates faced their first marksmanship evaluation. The training facility included an advanced shooting range with multiple scenarios and target configurations. Each candidate would be evaluated not only on accuracy, but also on decision-making and situational awareness. Kira felt a sense of calm as she stepped up to the firing line. Marksmanship had always been her strongest skill, honed through years of hunting with Parker and further refined during her military service. The exercise began with stationary targets at varying distances, then progressed to moving targets, and finally to a complex scenario with both hostile and civilian targets interspersed. Through it all, Kira maintained perfect focus, her breathing controlled and her movements economical. When she finished, Colonel Carter examined her target results with a slightly surprised expression. Impressive shooting, Harlow. Where did you learn to shoot like that? My neighbor taught me to hunt when I was a kid. The Marines refined the techniques. Carter nodded thoughtfully. Well, your neighbor taught you well. Best scores of the day so far. Reynolds, who was next in line, scowled at this news. His own performance was excellent, but fell short of Kira's scores in the precision categories. That evening, Kira received a letter from home. Her mother wrote that Michael's condition had worsened, and the doctors were now recommending surgery within the next month. The estimated cost was well beyond their means, even with their limited insurance coverage. Sitting on her bunk, Kira felt the weight of her promise to her father pressing down on her. She had to succeed in this program. It was the only way she could provide the care her brother needed. A commotion at the door of the barracks interrupted her thoughts. Cooper entered, his expression unusually serious. Harlow, you might want to check your equipment for tomorrow's exercise, he said quietly, taking a seat on the bunk opposite hers. I overheard Reynolds talking with some of his buddies. Sounded like they might be planning something. What kind of something? Not sure exactly, but he seemed pretty determined to prove that you don't belong here. Kira nodded, unsurprised. Thanks for the heads up. After Cooper left, she carefully inspected all her gear for the next day's land navigation exercise. Everything appeared to be in order, but she noticed slight scuff marks on the compass housing that hadn't been there before. Opening it, she found that the magnetic needle had been tampered with, subtly enough that it would appear functional but would lead her significantly off course during the exercise. Rather than reporting the sabotage, Kira simply replaced the compass with her backup. If Reynolds wanted to play games, that was his choice. She would focus on the actual challenges of the program. The land navigation exercise took place in rugged terrain, inland from the base. Candidates were required to locate 5 checkpoints using only a map, compass, and their navigational skills, all while carrying 40-pound packs. Carter explained the parameters as they assembled at dawn. This is an individual exercise to test your ability to move efficiently through difficult terrain and maintain your orientation. You have 8 hours to locate all 5 checkpoints and return to base. Missing any checkpoint is an automatic failure. He paused, scanning the group. One more thing. There are instructor teams positioned throughout the area. If they detect you, you'll be marked and penalized. Your goal is not just to find the checkpoints, but to remain undetected while doing so. Kira studied the map carefully, plotting her route. Most of the checkpoints were located in challenging positions, one on a rocky ridge, another in a deep ravine, a third in dense forest. The most efficient route would take her across several exposed areas where detection would be likely. As the exercise began, she noticed most candidates moving quickly, prioritizing speed over stealth. Reynolds led a group taking the most direct route, moving confidently through the terrain. Kira chose a different approach. Instead of taking direct lines between checkpoints, she plotted a route that maximized natural cover, even though it added considerable distance. She moved slowly, carefully, selecting each footfall to minimize noise and disturbance to the environment. The first checkpoint was located in a small clearing surrounded by dense underbrush. As Kira approached, she spotted an instructor team concealed near the checkpoint, watching for approaching candidates. She observed them for several minutes, noting their patterns of attention before identifying a small blind spot in their surveillance. Moving with extraordinary patience, she worked her way through thick brush to approach the checkpoint from an unexpected direction. She reached the marker, recorded the verification code, and withdrew without the instructors ever knowing she had been there. She continued this methodical approach throughout the day, taking significantly longer than most candidates to reach each checkpoint, but successfully avoiding detection at every location. By mid-afternoon, she had reached 4 of the 5 checkpoints and was making her way toward the final one, located on a rocky outcrop with limited approach options. As she carefully worked her way up the slope, she heard voices ahead. Freezing in place, she listened as Reynolds and another candidate approached the checkpoint from above. "I don't get it," the other candidate was saying. "How could Harlow be doing this well if her compass was messed up?" "She must have had a backup," Reynolds replied, frustration evident in his voice. "Doesn't matter. No way she finishes in time with the route she's taking. I saw her from the ridge moving like a snail." Kira remained perfectly still as they passed within 20 feet of her position, neither of them noticing her presence despite the relatively open terrain. Once they had moved on, she continued her careful ascent, reached the final checkpoint, and began her equally deliberate return to base. She arrived at the finish point with just 15 minutes remaining in the allotted time. Carter checked her verification codes with raised eyebrows. "Cutting it close, Harlow." "Yes, sir." "Interesting approach you took. Most candidates prioritize speed for this exercise. I prioritized remaining undetected, sir. It seemed equally important based on the instructions." Carter studied her for a moment. "Wait here." He stepped away to confer with several other instructors who had been monitoring the exercise. Their conversation included much gesturing and checking of notes before Carter returned. "Harlow, you were the only candidate to complete the entire course without being detected once. Most candidates were spotted at multiple checkpoints." A hint of approval crossed his normally stern features. Sometimes, slower is better. Word of Kira's performance spread quickly among the candidates. That evening, as they gathered in the mess hall, the atmosphere had subtly shifted. Several candidates who had previously ignored her now nodded in acknowledgement as she passed. Cooper joined her at a table, bringing along another candidate named Thompson, a former Special Forces operator with a quiet, thoughtful demeanor. "That was impressive today," Thompson said. "The instructors are still talking about it." "How did you move through that terrain without being spotted?" Cooper asked. Kira shrugged slightly. "My neighbor taught me to hunt. Anyone can be fast, but patience is the real skill. Understanding the environment, moving with it instead of against it." "Your neighbor sounds like a wise man," Thompson replied. "He is. Served as a sniper in Korea. He taught me that observation comes before action. Watch long enough and you'll see the patterns, the openings." Cooper leaned forward. "Think you could teach some of those techniques? The stealth portion of training is only going to get more intensive." Before Kira could answer, Reynolds approached their table, his expression tight with barely contained anger. "Quite the performance today, Harlow," he said. "I'm curious, though. Did you notice anything wrong with your initial equipment?" Kira met his gaze calmly. Nothing I couldn't handle. The implied message was clear, and Reynolds' face darkened. Enjoy your moment. We've barely begun training. There's a long way to go, and the physical demands will only increase. After he stormed off, Thompson raised an eyebrow. What was that about? Just a difference in philosophy, Kira replied. Some people think strength and speed are everything. Others know there are different kinds of strength. The following morning, Kira received another letter, this one from George Parker. The handwriting was slightly shaky, but still legible. Kira, your mother called to tell me about your progress. I'm proud of you, though not surprised. Remember what I taught you about hunting? Patience is the hunter's greatest weapon. Anyone can be fast or strong, but few truly understand how to wait, how to observe. Trust those instincts. They will serve you well in ways the others might not understand yet. The best hunters don't just know their prey, they know the terrain, the weather, the patterns of life around them. They become part of the environment rather than fighting against it. That's a lesson many never learn. Your father understood this better than anyone I've known. It made him exceptional in ways most men never achieve. You have that same gift, Kira. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Keep your eyes open and your mind clear. Parker. She carefully folded the letter and tucked it into her pocket, drawing strength from the connection to home and the wisdom of her mentor. That afternoon, Colonel Hayes summoned Kira to his office. The small, spartanly furnished room reflected Hayes's military precision. Maps covered one wall, and a collection of vintage firearms hung on another. Sit down, Harlow, Hayes said, gesturing to the chair opposite his desk. I've been reviewing your performance reports. Carter says you're exceeding expectations, particularly in fieldcraft and marksmanship. Thank you, sir. Hayes studied her for a moment. Your father had those same skills. The ability to remain perfectly still, to observe without being observed. It's a rare talent. He stood and moved to the window, looking out over the training grounds. I didn't recruit you just for your shooting skills or your Marine Corps record. It was something specific I observed in your psychological profile and combat reports. Kira waited as Hayes seemed to choose his words carefully. Most operators, when faced with extended periods of stress or discomfort, become increasingly agitated. Their performance degrades. Their decision-making suffers, but you demonstrated the opposite tendency. The longer a difficult situation continued, the calmer and more focused you became. That's rare, Harlow, and it's exactly what we need for certain types of operations. What types of operations, sir? The kind that require extraordinary patience and precision. Long-term surveillance, high-stakes reconnaissance, situations where conventional approaches fail. He turned to face her. We're developing a specialized unit for these missions, and I believe you could be a key part of it. He moved to a safe in the corner of the office, unlocked it, and removed a thick file folder with a red top secret stamp across its cover. He placed it on the desk in front of her. What I'm about to share with you is classified at the highest levels, Hayes said, opening the folder to reveal surveillance photographs and intelligence reports. Over the past 18 months, we've lost 6 high-value operatives in sensitive locations around the world. At first, they appeared to be unrelated incidents. A car accident in Turkey, an apparent suicide in Germany, a home invasion in Jordan. Hayes spread out several photos. Analysis eventually revealed a pattern. Each death was expertly disguised, but they were assassinations executed with extraordinary skill. He placed a final photograph in front of her. It showed a man in his 50s with cold, piercing eyes. This is Alexander Volkov, son of the KGB assassin your father eliminated in Berlin in 1978. Our intelligence indicates he's built an elite unit of killers trained specifically to hunt American special operators. They call themselves Viper. Kira felt a chill as the pieces fell into place. And you think my father's death? Hayes nodded grimly. The autopsy showed traces of a sophisticated toxin in his system. Undetectable unless you're specifically looking for it. I'm sorry, Kira. Your father wasn't just a retired operative to them. He was a symbol, a legend they needed to eliminate. Kira's mind raced, processing this new information. Her father hadn't simply died of heart disease. He'd been murdered, targeted by the son of a man he'd killed decades earlier. Volkov is recruiting former American military personnel, Hayes continued. People with insider knowledge of our tactics and procedures. We believe someone in this training program may be compromised. Reynolds, Kira said immediately. Hayes raised an eyebrow. You have evidence? Just instinct. And history. We crossed paths in Iraq. There was an incident he never reported correctly. Keep your suspicions to yourself for now. Watch. Observe. Do what your father taught you to do. As Kira left Hayes' office, her purpose had crystallized. This wasn't just about securing her family's future anymore. It was about justice for her father and protecting other operators from Volkov's vengeance. 2 weeks later, the candidates faced Ghost Week, the program's equivalent of the Navy SEALs Hell Week, designed to push them beyond their perceived limits through sleep deprivation, physical exhaustion, and extreme environmental stress. The instructors woke them at 0200 hours with explosions, gunfire, and shouting. For the next 5.5 days, they would experience constant physical activity, minimal sleep, and exposure to cold and heat. As dawn broke on the first day, the candidates stood shivering in the cold Atlantic surf, waves crashing against them as instructors shouted commands from the beach. Push-ups in the surf zone, crawls through the sand, and shuttle runs along the beach followed, all while they were soaking wet and increasingly cold. As the first hour stretched into 2, then 3, Kira focused on a technique Parker had taught her for enduring discomfort. Instead of fighting against the cold and pain, she acknowledged it, accepted it as temporary, and directed her attention elsewhere. She created a vivid mental image of her brother Michael recovering from successful surgery, of her mother's face lighting up at good news, of the family ranch thriving again. The morning progressed with increasingly demanding physical challenges. Candidates carried heavy rubber boats over their heads, performed endless sets of exercises, and repeatedly entered and exited the cold ocean. The instructors maintained constant pressure, shouting critiques and demanding more effort. By mid-morning, the first candidate approached the brass bell that stood on a stand near the training area. Its ring echoed across the beach, momentarily silencing the activity. One down. Many more would follow. During a brief transition between evolutions, Thompson ended up beside Kira as they prepared to carry their boat toward the next objective. "How are you holding up?" he asked quietly, his face already showing the strain of the morning's activities. "1 minute at a time," she replied. "That's all we need to think about." Thompson nodded gratefully at the simple advice. Kira noticed he was shivering more severely than the others. Without drawing attention, she slipped a small piece of chocolate from her pocket and passed it to him. "Quick energy," she whispered. "Eat it before the instructors see." His surprised expression was followed by gratitude as he quickly consumed the chocolate. That small act of teamwork established a bond between them that would prove valuable in the days ahead. The second day of Ghost Week brought the notorious log PT, where teams of candidates carried heavy logs through sand, over obstacles, and into the surf. The logs weighed over 200 pounds, designed for teams of much larger men than Kira. Her position at the end of the log put extraordinary strain on her shoulders and arms, which began to burn with fatigue after the first hour. As the evolution continued, Kira struggled more visibly than during previous challenges. Her smaller frame was a genuine disadvantage for this particular task, and the lack of sleep was beginning to affect everyone's performance. The log slipped slightly, causing the entire team to stumble. Reynolds, positioned near the middle, immediately called out, "Harlow's losing her grip. She can't hold it." The instructor overseeing their team approached, watching critically as Kira struggled to maintain her position. "Is this too much for you, Harlow? No shame in admitting you are not strong enough." The temptation to give up was powerful. Every muscle in Kira's body screamed for relief, and the brass bell seemed to call to her from across the training area. 2 more candidates had already rung it that morning, their expressions showing both defeat and relief as they departed. In that moment of weakness, Kira's mind filled with images of her father's funeral, her mother's worried face, her brother in a hospital bed. The promise she had made echoed in her thoughts. Then she heard Reynolds's satisfied voice. "I knew she wouldn't make it." Something hardened inside her. Kira locked eyes with the instructor. I can hold it, sir. Prove it, he challenged. Drawing on reserves she didn't know she possessed, Kira adjusted her grip and stance. Ready to continue, sir? The instructor nodded, a flicker of respect crossing his face. As they resumed their grueling march with the log, Kira caught Cooper's eye. He gave her an almost imperceptible nod of approval. The team struggled forward, but something had shifted in their dynamic. Instead of leaving Kira to manage on her own, her teammates subtly adjusted their positions and technique to distribute the weight more evenly. Cooper, positioned directly in front of her, matched his pace perfectly to hers, creating a rhythm that made the burden more manageable. By the time they completed the evolution, every candidate was exhausted, but they had succeeded as a team. Even Reynolds was too tired for further taunts. That night, during the brief rest period allotted between evolutions, Carter approached Kira as she wolfed down an energy bar. That was impressive today, Harlow. Most candidates would have quit. Not an option for me, sir. He studied her face, noting the determination behind the exhaustion. What drives you? What keeps you going when others would give up? Kira considered the question. A promise I made, sir, to my father, before he died. Carter nodded slowly. Family promises are powerful motivation. Just remember there's a difference between pushing through pain and causing permanent injury. Know where that line is. Yes, sir. As Carter walked away, Kira felt a curious mixture of exhaustion and pride. 2 days down, 3.5 to go. Her body hurt in ways she hadn't thought possible, but her resolve remained intact. The third day brought the most challenging ocean exercises. Teams had to navigate through heavy surf while carrying their boats, then paddle out beyond the breakers before returning to shore, only to repeat the process again and again. The ocean was particularly rough that day, with 6-foot waves crashing onto the beach. Several candidates were visibly intimidated by the conditions, their faces showing anxiety as they prepared to enter the water. As Kira's team positioned themselves to charge into the surf with their boat held overhead, she noticed something about the wave patterns that others had missed. Wait, she said to her team as they were about to move. Watch the water. Cooper, who had emerged as the de facto leader of their team, hesitated. What are you seeing? The waves come in sets of 7. After the 7th, there's a brief lull before the next set. If we time our entry for that lull, we can get beyond the break zone before the next big set hits. Cooper considered this for a moment, then nodded. Everyone hold position. We wait for Harlow's signal. The instructor overseeing their team frowned. What's the delay? Move out now. Respectfully, sir. We're observing the conditions to determine optimal entry, Cooper replied. The instructor looked skeptical but allowed them to continue. Kira watched intently, counting the waves as they crashed ashore. As the 7th wave receded, she called out, Now! Move fast! The team surged forward, carrying their boat into the water during the brief calm period. They successfully passed the break zone before the next set of large waves arrived, giving them a significant advantage over the other teams who were still struggling to time their entry. Wait for it, Kira called as they prepared to return to shore. Watch for the pattern again. We ride the back of the 7th wave in. Her team followed her guidance, using the ocean's natural rhythm to their advantage rather than fighting against it. They completed the evolution more efficiently than any other group, earning a rare nod of approval from Colonel Carter, who had been observing from shore. As they dragged their boat back onto the beach, Thompson turned to Kira. Harlow, how did you know about the wave patterns? Observation, she replied simply. The ocean has rhythms just like anything else in nature. Once you understand the pattern, you can work with it instead of against it. Word of Kira's ocean tactics spread among the candidates, and several other teams began attempting to time their entries and exits based on wave sets. Reynolds, however, stubbornly refused to adopt the approach, leading his team into increasingly difficult situations as they fought against the full force of the breaking waves. During one particularly challenging evolution, Reynolds' team lost control of their boat in the heavy surf. The rubber craft flipped, throwing Reynolds into the churning water. The instructors were alert but maintained their distance, watching to see how the candidates would handle the emergency. Kira, who was returning to shore with her team, spotted Reynolds being pulled away from his group by a strong rip current. Without hesitation, she broke from her team and swam toward him. Reynolds was fighting against the current, exhausting himself rapidly. By the time Kira reached him, he was struggling to keep his head above water. "Stop fighting it," she called over the roar of the waves. "Swim parallel to shore until we clear the current." Reynolds was too exhausted to argue. He followed Kira's lead as she guided them along the edge of the rip current until they reached calmer water, then angled back toward shore. Neither the instructors nor the other candidates had noticed the rescue, and Reynolds said nothing as they rejoined their respective teams. Only Kira knew what had happened, and she chose to keep it that way. This wasn't about recognition or gaining an advantage over Reynolds. It was simply the right thing to do. By the fourth day, the remaining candidates were operating in a dreamlike state of exhaustion. Only 12 remained, their movements becoming increasingly mechanical as sleep deprivation took its toll. They had slept less than 4 hours total since Ghost Week began, and every muscle in their bodies ached from constant exertion. The day's evolutions focused on leadership skills. Each candidate took turns leading their team through complex tactical scenarios, evaluated not only on mission success, but on their ability to make sound decisions under extreme stress and fatigue. When Reynolds' turn came to lead, he opted for an aggressive, speed-based approach to the mission, pushing his team hard despite their exhaustion. His plan was technically sound, but failed to account for the diminished capabilities of his teammates. They fell short of their objective when two team members simply couldn't maintain the pace he demanded. Kira's leadership assessment came later that day. The scenario involved infiltrating a simulated enemy position, retrieving intelligence, and exfiltrating without detection. Her team included Cooper, Thompson, and a fourth candidate named Reyes, who had barely spoken through most of Ghost Week. As they gathered to plan, Kira noted their condition. Everyone was operating at perhaps 30% of their normal capacity, with slowed reaction times and impaired decision-making due to fatigue. "Here's what we're going to do," she began. "This isn't about speed. It's about being smart and conserving energy." She outlined a methodical approach that emphasized careful observation before movement, using natural cover, and moving only when necessary. Some team members expressed concern about the time constraints, but Kira was firm. "Trust me, this isn't about being brave or aggressive. It's about being smart and making sure everyone gets home safely." Her plan took longer to execute than Reynolds's had, but it proved far more effective. By carefully studying the instructor's patrol patterns before making each move, they successfully completed their mission without a single detection. More importantly, they finished with energy to spare while other teams collapsed in exhaustion immediately after their attempts. Colonel Carter observed their debriefing with interest. "Harlow, your tactical planning shows a different approach than what we typically see. Explain your methodology." "I assessed our team's condition realistically, sir. Given our fatigue levels, a speed-based approach would likely fail. Instead, I chose to emphasize observation and timing to minimize physical exertion while maximizing our chances of success." Carter nodded thoughtfully. "An important lesson. Sometimes the best tactical decision is to recognize your limitations and adapt accordingly rather than pushing beyond capability." Later that evening, as candidates prepared for yet another night evolution, Colonel Hayes made an appearance at the training site. He observed from a distance as the instructors set up the next challenge, occasionally making notes in a small notebook. During a brief transition period, he approached Kira, speaking quietly so others couldn't overhear. "You're doing well, Harlow. Your approach to leadership today was exactly the kind of thinking we're looking for. The next evolution will be particularly challenging. It's designed to test decision-making under extreme pressure. Remember what I told you about your unique capabilities." Before Kira could ask for clarification, Hayes moved away, continuing his observations of the candidates. The night swim evolution was notorious among special operations candidates as one of the most psychologically challenging aspects of their training. Swimming 2 miles in the open ocean at night, navigating to specific coordinates, and returning to a designated location on shore, all while suffering from extreme fatigue, created a perfect storm of physical and mental stress. As the candidates received their briefing, Kira studied the maps carefully, noting the current patterns and potential navigation hazards. The water temperature had dropped with the sunset, and the darkness made the ocean seem particularly ominous. You will swim individually to these coordinates, Carter explained, marking points on their maps. At each location, you will find a marker buoy with a code. Record the code and return to this exact location on the beach. Any candidate who fails to retrieve all codes or returns to the wrong location will be dropped from training. The gravity of the challenge was evident on every face. Swimming in darkness created disorientation, and the cold water would rapidly sap their already depleted strength. Failure at this stage, after enduring so much, would be devastating. As they entered the water, Kira focused on establishing a sustainable rhythm with her strokes, conserving energy while maintaining forward progress. She had plotted a course that would use the ocean currents to assist rather than hinder her journey, a strategy that required precise navigation but would save precious energy. The darkness was almost complete, with only faint moonlight illuminating the water's surface. Each candidate swam alone, quickly becoming isolated dots in the vast blackness of the ocean. Halfway through the swim, Kira spotted another candidate struggling nearby. As she drew closer, she recognized Thompson, his movements becoming increasingly erratic as he fought against exhaustion and disorientation. "Thompson," she called, adjusting her course to reach him. "Are you all right?" "Can't get my bearings," he gasped. "Everything looks the same. I don't know which way to go." Kira could see the panic building in his expression. Disorientation in open water was dangerous, potentially fatal if it led to hyperventilation or cramping. She faced an immediate dilemma. Helping Thompson would significantly reduce her own chances of completing the evolution successfully. The energy required to guide both of them to the target coordinates and back to shore might be more than she had left. But leaving him to struggle alone was unthinkable. A memory flashed through her mind. Her father's voice during one of their last conversations. "The value of a person isn't what they can do for themselves. It's what they do for others." "Stay with me," she told Thompson firmly. "Match my pace. I know the way." "You should go on," he protested weakly. "Don't risk failing because of me. We're going together. That's final." Kira adjusted her course slightly to compensate for Thompson's reduced speed and increased drag. She guided him through the darkness, occasionally providing quiet encouragement when his pace faltered. The additional effort was draining her reserves rapidly, but she maintained a steady rhythm, using her knowledge of the currents to maximize their efficiency. They reached the final marker buoy just as Thompson seemed ready to give up entirely. Kira helped him record the code, then began the challenging return journey to shore. The beach seemed impossibly distant, a thin line of lights against the night sky. Thompson's movements were becoming increasingly uncoordinated, a dangerous sign of hypothermia and extreme fatigue. Kira stayed close, sometimes physically guiding him when he began to drift off course. When they finally reached the shallows, both were near complete exhaustion. They stumbled onto the beach, collapsing onto the sand at the exact location they had been instructed to return to. Carter and another instructor approached, checking their recorded codes and noting their condition. "Harlow," Carter called as medical staff attended to Thompson. "You completed the course on a significantly less efficient route than what you initially plotted." "Why?" Kira, still catching her breath, met his gaze steadily. "Thompson was disoriented, sir. I couldn't leave him out there alone. You risked failing this evolution to help him. We're a team, sir. Teams don't leave people behind." Carter studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. "Get some rest. You've got 20 minutes before the next evolution." As Carter walked away, Hayes approached from where he had been observing. He knelt briefly beside Kira, speaking quietly. "That's exactly what I was talking about, Harlow. Not everyone would make that choice. Remember that." The final day of Ghost Week tested everything the candidates had learned and every ounce of endurance they had left. Only 9 remained, including Kira, Cooper, Thompson, and surprisingly, Reynolds. Each small team was assigned a complex mission that required them to use all their tactical skills while operating on almost no sleep and with their bodies pushed to absolute limits. Kira's team was tasked with conducting reconnaissance of a simulated enemy position, gathering specific intelligence and reporting back without being detected. Despite their exhaustion, Kira led her team methodically through the mission planning process, identifying the best approach routes and observation positions. They moved with deliberate care through the terrain, conserving their minimal energy while successfully avoiding the instructor teams serving as opposition forces. When they returned with complete and accurate intelligence after successfully evading detection throughout the entire mission, even the instructors seemed impressed by their performance. As the sun rose on the final morning of Ghost Week, the surviving candidates assembled on the same beach where their ordeal had begun. Their faces showed the effects of 5.5 days of constant physical activity, sleep deprivation, and cold exposure. They stood in silence as Carter addressed them. Candidates, you have completed Ghost Week. This achievement alone puts you in rare company. Many who begin this journey never reach this point. His typically stern expression softened slightly. Take pride in what you've accomplished, but understand that your training is far from complete. You've proven you have the mental toughness to continue. The real work begins now. The formal dismissal that followed seemed almost anticlimactic after everything they had endured. The candidates were directed to medical evaluations followed by a recovery period before training would resume. As they slowly dispersed, Carter approached Kira. "Harlow, a moment," she stopped, wondering if there was some additional test or evaluation to come. "You've completed one of the most challenging programs in the military," Carter said. "Your performance during Ghost Week demonstrated exceptional mental toughness and tactical thinking. But I need to ask you something important." He studied her face carefully. "The teams you'll eventually join conduct real operations in dangerous places around the world. People's lives will depend on your performance. Are you prepared for that responsibility?" Kira met his gaze steadily. "Sir, everything I've learned has been preparing me for that moment. I understand the responsibility, and I'm ready to serve wherever I'm needed." Carter nodded. "I believe you are. Get some rest, Harlow. You've earned it." As Kira turned to leave, Thompson approached. His face showed the strain of Ghost Week, but his eyes were clear and focused. "Harlow," he said quietly, "I never properly thanked you for what you did during the night swim. You saved my life out there. You would have done the same for me." "I don't know if I would have," he admitted. "That's what makes you different, and I won't forget it." The recovery period following Ghost Week allowed the candidates to begin healing both physically and mentally. Their training schedule eased slightly, though the standards remained exceptionally high. The 9 survivors formed a tighter bond, having shared an experience few others could understand. Even Reynolds' attitude had shifted somewhat. While still not friendly, he had abandoned his overt hostility, treating Kira with grudging respect during training evolutions. 2 weeks after Ghost Week, Kira received news from home. Her brother's surgery had been successful, but the doctors recommended additional treatments that would extend his recovery time and add to the already substantial medical costs. Meanwhile, the bank had agreed to a temporary extension on the ranch's foreclosure, but the situation remained precarious. The pressure to succeed in her training took on renewed urgency. As the specialized phases began, Kira found herself excelling in areas that aligned perfectly with the skills Parker had taught her years earlier. The precision shooting courses were where she truly distinguished herself. While other candidates performed well in controlled conditions, Kira maintained exceptional accuracy even under stress. During one advanced shooting exercise, candidates had to engage targets at varying distances while instructors created distractions designed to simulate combat conditions. Loud noises, smoke, conflicting commands, and physical obstacles were introduced to test the candidates' ability to maintain focus under pressure. Where most saw their accuracy decrease significantly, Kira seemed to become more focused and precise as the distractions increased. Master Chief Williams, the senior marksmanship instructor, reviewed her targets with evident surprise. "Harlow, your shooting scores under stress conditions are some of the best we've ever recorded. Have you considered specializing as a sniper?" "I'd be interested in that path, Master Chief." Williams nodded thoughtfully. "We'll see. You've got the fundamentals." "That's certain." The underwater operations phase presented new challenges that combined Kira's swimming abilities with technical skills. Learning to place explosive charges underwater while maintaining precise timing and coordination required a different kind of focus than anything she had experienced before. During these exercises, Kira's methodical approach again proved valuable. While other candidates rushed to complete underwater missions, she took time to ensure her equipment was properly positioned and her timing accurate. This careful approach meant her practice demolitions were consistently successful, while others had to repeat their attempts multiple times. The leadership training phase represented the final and perhaps most critical evaluation before assignment to operational teams. Each candidate took turns planning and leading complex missions, while instructors evaluated their decision-making, adaptability, and ability to utilize their team's strengths effectively. When Kira's turn came to lead a particularly challenging night infiltration exercise, she faced subtle but noticeable skepticism from some of the other candidates, including a recent transfer named Jake Reed, a distant relative of Reynolds who shared similar views about women in special operations. As she outlined her plan during the briefing, Reed interrupted, "With all due respect, Harlow, that approach seems unnecessarily cautious. We could move much faster and still accomplish the objective." "Speed isn't the priority for this mission," Kira replied calmly. "Avoiding detection is. The instructors have specifically positioned observation posts to catch teams using obvious approach routes. Or maybe you're just not confident in our ability to move quickly enough," Reed suggested, his tone just short of insubordination. The room fell silent as others waited for Kira's response. This was as much a test of her leadership as the mission itself. How she handled the challenge would determine whether the team would follow her plan or fracture under pressure. Kira took a moment before responding, remembering Parker's advice about patience in difficult moments. "This isn't about confidence or courage, Reed. It's about being smart and ensuring everyone completes the mission successfully. I've studied the terrain and opposition forces carefully. The approach I've outlined gives us the highest probability of success with the lowest risk." She turned to address the entire team. "Each of you has demonstrated exceptional skills throughout this training. I'm asking you to trust me to put those skills to use in the most effective way possible." Cooper spoke up from the back of the room. "I've followed Harlow's tactical plans before. They work. I'm in." Thompson nodded his agreement. "Same here." One by one, the other team members indicated their support, leaving Reed isolated in his objection. Recognizing his position, he reluctantly conceded. "Fine, we'll try it your way." The mission proceeded exactly as Kira had planned. By carefully observing enemy patrol patterns before moving, utilizing unexpected approach routes, and maintaining disciplined noise and light discipline, the team successfully infiltrated the target facility, retrieved the required intelligence, and extracted without a single detection. During the debriefing, Colonel Hayes made a rare appearance, observing as the instructors evaluated the team's performance. "Harlow, your tactical planning shows real promise," Hayes commented. "Your ability to read the situation and develop effective approaches demonstrates the kind of thinking we need in specialized reconnaissance roles." The praise from Hayes was significant, especially coming in front of the other candidates and instructors. It served as public validation of Kira's leadership capabilities and tactical approach. As training neared completion, the candidates began receiving information about their potential assignments to various special operations teams. The specialized nature of the training program meant that many would be directed to teams with specific operational focuses rather than general assignment. One evening, Hayes requested a private meeting with Kira. They walked along the beach, the setting sun casting long shadows across the sand. "You've exceeded expectations throughout this program, Harlow," Hayes began. "Your performance during Ghost Week was exemplary, and your specialized skills in reconnaissance and marksmanship are exactly what we've been looking for. I've recommended you for assignment to Team 5. They specialize in long-duration surveillance and intelligence-gathering operations. Lieutenant Commander Chen, the team leader, has specifically requested you based on your training evaluations." Kira felt a surge of pride at this news. Being requested by name for a specific team was unusual for new operators. "There's something else you should know," Hayes continued. "Team 5 is currently preparing for deployment to a sensitive operational area. If you accept this assignment, you'll be joining them almost immediately after completing your training. What about the usual integration period, sir? There isn't time. The nature of their current mission requires your particular skill set as soon as possible. He stopped walking and turned to face her directly. I won't mislead you, Harlow. This is an unusually rapid transition from training to operations. It will be challenging, but I believe you're ready. Kira considered the implications. A fast assignment would mean less time to resolve her family's financial situation before deployment, but it would also accelerate her ability to provide the support they needed. I'll be ready, sir. Good. There's one more thing. Hayes's expression became more serious. I've received reports about your interactions with Reynolds during training. While nothing has risen to the level of formal complaints, there's a history there that concerns me. Sir, any issues between Reynolds and myself won't affect my performance. I believe that. But you should know that Reynolds has connections through his father that have secured him an assignment with a specialized unit as well. Despite his inconsistent performance, your paths may cross again in the future. The warning was clear. Reynolds might continue to be an obstacle, potentially in operational settings where the stakes would be much higher than training exercises. I understand, sir. I'll be prepared for that possibility. As their final weeks of training concluded, the remaining candidates developed a stronger sense of camaraderie, knowing they would soon disperse to different teams and missions. The shared experience of their training created bonds that transcended their initial differences and conflicts. On the evening before graduation, Cooper organized an informal gathering of the candidates who had survived the entire program. They met on the beach, away from the instructors and the formal structure of the base. I wanted to say something before we all head out tomorrow, Cooper began, looking around at the small group. What we've been through together these past months is something most people will never understand. We've seen each other at our absolute worst and at our best. He turned to Kira. Harlow, when you first arrived, I'll admit I had doubts. Not because you're a woman, but because this program is designed to break anyone, regardless of gender. But you've proven something important, not just about yourself, but about what really matters in this work. From his pocket, Cooper produced a small object and handed it to Kira. It was a tactical knife, standard issue for special operators, but this one had been custom engraved on the handle with a simple image of a falcon in flight. We took up a collection, he explained as Kira examined the knife with surprise. Carter told us about what happened during the night swim, how you guided Thompson through the darkness when you could have gone ahead on your own. Thompson stepped forward. Harlow doesn't just observe. She hunts. She circles high above, seeing everything, waiting for the perfect moment. She's like a falcon. Kira felt an unexpected tightness in her throat as she looked at the knife, then at the faces of her fellow candidates. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, Cooper replied. Just remember that whenever you carry that knife, you've got people who believe in you. The next morning, as the graduation ceremony concluded and the newly qualified operators prepared to disperse to their assignments, Kira received one last piece of news from home. The first payment from her Special Operations Completion bonus had been processed, providing enough funds to prevent the immediate foreclosure of the family ranch. Her brother was recovering well from his surgery, but would need ongoing treatment for at least another year. As she prepared to join Team 5 for immediate pre-deployment training, Kira felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. She had made it through one of the most challenging military training programs in the world. But the real test still lay ahead. The promises she had made to her father, to her family, and now to her team would be fulfilled through her actions in the field. The nickname God Falcon would follow her to her new assignment, a recognition not just of her observational skills, but of her patience, precision, and unique approach to operations. As she packed her gear, including the knife her teammates had given her, Kira wondered what challenges awaited her with Team 5. Whatever came next, she would face it with the lessons Parker had taught her years ago. Patience is the hunter's greatest weapon, and understanding the environment is more important than brute strength. These principles had carried her through Ghost Protocol training when many doubted she could succeed. Now they would guide her into operational service where the stakes would be far higher. The heat was oppressive, rising in invisible waves from the desert floor. Through her scope, Kira Harlow watched the compound below with unwavering focus. 6 months had passed since her graduation from Ghost Protocol training, yet the memory of that final night on the beach with her teammates felt recent, almost tangible. The tactical knife they had given her rested in its sheath against her leg, a constant reminder of their confidence in her abilities. Now, as she lay motionless on a rocky outcrop overlooking the target area in Syria, those abilities were being put to their first real test. Her spotter, Marcus Cooper, lay beside her, monitoring their surroundings through high-powered binoculars. "Movement at the east entrance," he whispered, barely audible despite their close proximity. "Two guards changing positions." Kira made a slight adjustment to her position, careful not to disturb the natural camouflage that made them nearly invisible against the rocky terrain. They had maintained this observation post for almost 56 hours without detection, gathering intelligence on the facility below, where a team of American special operators had gone missing 3 days earlier. The scope of her MK-13 Mod 7 sniper rifle revealed details invisible to the naked eye. The number and positioning of guards, the patterns of activity around the main structures, the arrivals and departures of vehicles. Every detail was meticulously documented for their mission report. This was Kira's first real operation with Team 5, the specialized unit she had joined immediately after completing her training. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Chen, the team leader, had assigned her to work with Cooper in the role of primary observer, sniper, while the rest of the team prepared for a potential rescue operation. Their partnership had been Cooper's idea, a way to evaluate the newcomer's capabilities in the field. At first, some team members had been skeptical about her. "I've worked with a lot of operators," one had told her during their initial briefing. "Some have natural talent, others don't. I don't care about your training scores. Out here, it's about what you can actually do when it matters." The directness hadn't bothered Kira. In fact, she appreciated it. Better to have doubts voiced openly than whispered behind her back. And over the past 56 hours, she had sensed a gradual shift in the team's demeanor as they observed her methodical approach to the mission. "We've got movement," Cooper murmured. "North side of the compound. Looks like a patrol returning." Kira shifted her focus to the new activity. Through her thermal scope, she could see 6 figures moving with the disciplined spacing and tactical awareness that marked them as professionals, not local militants. Their weapons handling and movement patterns suggested advanced training. "These aren't typical insurgents," she whispered. "Look at their formation and patrol discipline." Cooper studied them through his binoculars. "You're right. These guys have serious training. Military background, maybe Russian or Eastern European contractors." As Kira continued to observe, one of the patrol members looked up toward the ridge where they were concealed. Though they were well hidden and over a kilometer away, something about the deliberate way the man scanned the heights sent a chill through her. He seemed to be looking for something specific, as if he knew someone might be watching. When he turned to speak to the team leader, Kira adjusted her scope's magnification to get a clearer view of his face. The blood in her veins turned to ice. "Cooper," she whispered urgently, "I need to confirm something. The patrol leader just spoke to a subordinate. Can you get a visual on his face?" Cooper shifted positions slightly, focusing his high-powered optics on the figure below. After a moment, he froze. "Holy shit," he breathed. "That's Reynolds. What the hell is he doing here?" Kira's mind raced. The last she'd heard, Reynolds had been assigned to a counter-terrorism unit after Ghost Protocol training. Now he was here, apparently leading a team of foreign professionals at a site where American operators had disappeared. "We need to report this immediately," she said, reaching for their secure communication device. Within minutes, they were connected to Commander Chen at the forward operating base. "Sierra Actual, this is Ghost 1. Priority intelligence update. We have visual confirmation of American personnel on site, working with the opposition force. Repeat, American personnel cooperating with hostiles." Chen's voice came back instantly. "Identify. Victor Reynolds, sir. Former Delta, graduated Ghost Protocol with us 6 months ago. He appears to be directing a team of 6 foreign professionals with military-grade equipment and training." A long pause followed. Visual confirmation is solid? 100% positive, sir. Cooper has secondary verification. Maintain observation. Document everything. Do not engage unless directly compromised. We need to understand what we're dealing with before taking action. Reinforcements are en route. ETA 6 hours. Understood, sir. Ghost 1 out. As Kira returned the communications device to Cooper, their eyes met in shared understanding. Reynolds's presence changed everything. This wasn't just a hostage situation. It was potentially a betrayal from within their own ranks. We need to keep watching, Kira said quietly. If Reynolds is involved, there's more happening here than we originally thought. For the next 4 hours, they documented every movement, every interaction, every vehicle and person entering or leaving the compound. Reynolds appeared to have authority and moved with the confidence of someone in command. The pattern of activity suggested preparation for movement. Equipment was being loaded into vehicles, guard rotations increased, communications equipment dismantled. They're preparing to evacuate, Kira observed, probably within the next few hours. Cooper nodded grimly. And if they're taking prisoners with them, we may lose them completely. Kira made a decision. We need to move closer. Current position doesn't give us visual access to the interior spaces. We need to confirm if our people are alive and inside before they move out. That's high risk, Cooper warned. If these guys are as good as they appear, they'll have counter-surveillance measures in place. I'll go alone, Kira said. You maintain this position as overwatch and communication relay. I can move more quietly and with less chance of detection solo. Cooper hesitated, then nodded. Agreed. But at first sign of compromise, you abort and return here. We can't afford to lose both observers. Kira spent the next 20 minutes planning her approach route, studying the terrain and guard patterns to identify the best path of ingress. She would need to move nearly half a kilometer across exposed terrain to reach a closer observation point with better visibility into the compound. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the landscape, she prepared to move. Checking her sidearm and ensuring her camouflage was secure, she nodded to Cooper. Maintain communication silence unless emergency. I'll report when in position. Cooper reached out and briefly gripped her shoulder. Godfalcon, he said quietly, using her nickname for the first time in the field. Hunt well. Moving with extraordinary patience, Kira began her slow, deliberate journey across the terrain. Each movement was carefully planned, each pause timed to coincide with guard rotations or distractions. Using the growing shadows as cover, she progressed centimeter by centimeter toward her target position, a small outcropping that would provide concealment and a direct line of sight into the compound's main building. The journey took over 2 hours to cover less than 500 meters, but she arrived undetected as darkness fell completely. Setting up her observation equipment with practiced efficiency, she began her surveillance of the target building. Through her thermal scope, she could now see into portions of the structure. Heat signatures revealed multiple personnel inside, including 4 figures in a separate room that appeared to be restrained, likely the missing American team. She was about to begin transmitting this intelligence when movement caught her eye. Reynolds had emerged from the building and was speaking urgently with another man, one Kira didn't recognize. The stranger carried himself with the unmistakable authority of a commander, and even from this distance there was something coldly professional about his bearing. When he turned, the moonlight illuminated his face briefly. Though she had never seen him in person, Kira instantly recognized him from Hayes' intelligence file. Alexander Volkov, the son of the KGB assassin her father had eliminated decades earlier. Everything suddenly clicked into place. Reynolds wasn't just working with foreign mercenaries, he was working directly with Volkov's Viper unit, the organization responsible for her father's murder and the deaths of American operatives around the world. As Kira observed their interaction, Volkov appeared to issue instructions, pointing toward the ridge where Cooper maintained his position. Alarm shot through her as she realized they might have detected his presence. Reynolds nodded and immediately gathered a team of 4 men, heading toward the vehicles. She needed to warn Cooper. Breaking communication silence, she activated her secure transmitter. Overwatch, Godfalcon. You are compromised. Repeat, Your position is compromised. Enemy team deploying to your location. Evacuate immediately. Cooper's response was immediate. Understood. Displacing now. What about you? I'm maintaining position. Primary targets identified. Alexander Volkov is on site with Reynolds. Confirmed hostages alive. 4 personnel in Northeast building. Volkov, are you certain? Positive ID. This is personal, Cooper. This is the man who had my father killed. A long pause followed. Don't do anything rash, Falcon. Remember the mission. I won't. But I'm not leaving until reinforcements arrive. Someone needs to keep eyes on target. Understood. I'll relay to command once clear. Be careful. As Cooper's transmission ended, Kira settled deeper into her hide position. The next few hours would be critical. If Volkov and Reynolds were preparing to move the hostages, she might be the only thing standing between them and disappearance into the vast network of Viper safehouses across the region. The moon disappeared behind clouds, plunging the landscape into near-total darkness. Using her night vision equipment, Kira continued her vigilant observation. Reynolds' team had departed in 2 vehicles, heading toward Cooper's former position. Meanwhile, activity in the compound increased, with personnel loading equipment into trucks and securing the perimeter. 2 hours passed. Kira remained absolutely motionless, controlling her breathing, minimizing her heat signature, becoming one with the environment as Parker had taught her so many years ago. Her patience was rewarded when a small convoy of vehicles began to form near the main building. The hostages, still bound, were led from the building toward an armored truck. Kira documented everything, transmitting encrypted data bursts to the approaching reinforcement team. Position details, vehicle descriptions, number of guards, weapons observed, every piece of intelligence that might give them an edge when they arrived. As the preparations for departure neared completion, Reynolds' team returned to the compound. From their demeanor, she could tell they hadn't found Cooper. Good. He had escaped and would be relaying critical information to Commander Chen and the reinforcements. Volkov emerged from the building again, speaking with Reynolds. Even without audio, Kira could tell from their body language that Volkov was displeased. Reynolds gestured toward the hills, attempting to explain the absence of the observer they'd detected. What happened next occurred with shocking speed. Without warning, Volkov drew a pistol and fired twice into Reynolds' chest. As Reynolds crumpled to the ground, Volkov calmly gave orders to his remaining men, who immediately accelerated their departure preparations, abandoning Reynolds' body where it had fallen. Kira felt no satisfaction watching Reynolds' betrayal end in his execution. Whatever his motivations for turning against his country, this violent end served only to confirm the ruthlessness of the organization he had joined. The convoy was now fully assembled, engines running, preparing to depart with the hostages. Kira faced an impossible decision. Reinforcements were still at least an hour away. Once the convoy left, the hostages would likely disappear forever. She had no authority to engage, and doing so would almost certainly result in her own death against such overwhelming odds. But allowing Volkov to escape with American prisoners was unacceptable. Not just professionally, but personally. This was the man responsible for her father's death, now preparing to disappear with 4 more American lives. She thought of Parker's lessons about hunting. Sometimes the hunter must take the shot, even when conditions aren't perfect. She thought of her father's journals, the techniques he'd developed for creating confusion and opportunity from chaos. Making her decision, Kira adjusted her rifle, focusing on the convoy's lead vehicle. Not the driver. That would just stop the convoy in place. Instead, she aimed for the engine block of the last vehicle, the one blocking the other's exit from the compound. Taking a deep breath, she squeezed the trigger. The crack of the rifle echoed across the valley as the round found its mark. The engine block of the last vehicle erupted in a shower of sparks and steam, effectively blocking the narrow exit path from the compound. Immediate chaos erupted. Guards scrambled for cover, shouting orders and scanning the surrounding terrain for the source of the shot. Kira remained perfectly still, controlling her breathing as she observed the reaction through her scope. Volkov emerged from the lead vehicle, his face a mask of cold fury. He barked orders at his men, who began spreading out into defensive positions. The prisoners were rushed back into the main building, away from the exposed convoy. Kira's strategy had worked. She had prevented the immediate departure without revealing her position or directly engaging the superior force. Now she needed to create enough confusion and delay to keep the hostages in place until reinforcements arrived. Selecting her next target carefully, she fired again, this time disabling the lead vehicle's communications array mounted on its roof. The precision shot destroyed the equipment without risking any lives, further isolating Volkov's team from outside support. Through her scope, she could see Volkov's expression change from anger to cold calculation. He was reassessing, adapting to the new threat. He ordered his men to establish a perimeter and begin a systematic sweep of the surrounding terrain. They would find her eventually, but every minute she kept them occupied was another minute closer to the arrival of the rescue team. Kira abandoned her position immediately after the second shot, moving laterally along the ridge to a secondary hide she had identified during her approach. The rocky terrain provided multiple concealment options, and the darkness worked in her favor. Moving with deliberate care, she left no trail, no disturbance that would betray her path. From her new position, she could see Volkov directing the search, pointing teams toward likely sniper positions on the surrounding high ground. His tactical assessment was accurate. He was identifying the exact locations a conventional sniper would choose. But Kira wasn't conventional. She had positioned herself where no reasonable operator would, in a location with limited fields of fire and a difficult extraction route, but with perfect concealment. She keyed her transmitter for a brief, encrypted data burst to the approaching reinforcements. Convoy departure prevented. Hostages secure inside main building. Enemy conducting perimeter sweep. Reynolds KIA by Volkov. The acknowledgement came seconds later. Ghost 1. This is Whiskey Actual. ETA 42 minutes. Hold position. 42 minutes. She needed to maintain the standoff without being discovered for nearly an hour. Time to implement another lesson from her father's journals. The search teams were moving methodically through the terrain, using standard counter-sniper tactics, checking the most obvious positions first, working outward in expanding rings. They were professionals, thorough and disciplined. 2 three-man teams were approaching the ridge where she had taken the shots, while others secured the lower ground. Kira removed a small device from her equipment pouch, a remote-triggered sound diversion, standard issue for reconnaissance operations. She set its timer for 15 minutes and placed it securely in a small crevice. When it activated, it would mimic the distinctive sound of a rifle bolt action, drawing attention to this position while she operated elsewhere. Moving with ghost-like silence, she worked her way to a new observation point that offered a view of both the compound and the approaching search teams. Volkov remained near the main building, clearly unwilling to risk exposing himself. Smart. He knew enough about snipers to respect their capabilities. The next 20 minutes passed in a dangerous game of cat and mouse. The search teams methodically cleared position after position, gradually narrowing the possible locations where the shooter might be hiding. When her diversion activated, it successfully drew several teams toward the empty position, buying precious minutes. Through it all, Kira remained utterly still, controlling every aspect of her presence, her breathing, her heat signature, even the timing of her movements to coincide with gusts of wind or distant sounds that might mask any noise. 35 minutes had passed. The search teams were beginning to approach areas uncomfortably close to her current hide. She needed another diversion, something to keep them occupied for the final minutes before reinforcements arrived. Assessing her options, Kira made a calculated decision. She would give Volkov something to focus on other than the search. She would give him a target he couldn't ignore. Adjusting her position slightly, she lined up a shot on the main compound's generator, visible near the western wall. With surgical precision, she fired a single round. The generator exploded in a brilliant flash, plunging the entire compound into darkness, save for emergency lights. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Attention shifted from the search to securing the compound perimeter. In the confusion, Kira transmitted one final update to the approaching rescue team. Target marked, power disabled, eastern approach recommended. Now she needed to survive just 7 more minutes. The darkness worked both for and against her. It provided better concealment, but made movement more hazardous. She could hear the search teams regrouping, their communication becoming more urgent as they responded to the new development. Through her night vision goggles, Kira spotted two searchers approaching her position from below. They moved with professional caution, checking each potential hide spot methodically. Discovery was now inevitable unless she created one final distraction. From her equipment, she removed her last resource, a small thermal decoy designed to mimic a human heat signature. Activating it, she placed it in a concealed position 30 meters from her actual location, then retreated to her final defensive position. If discovered, she would at least have the high ground and the element of surprise. The decoy worked. The searchers converged on the false heat signature, momentarily confused when they found nothing. In their hesitation, Kira heard it. The distant thrum of helicopter rotors approaching from the northeast. The rescue team had arrived. What followed unfolded with the choreographed precision of a well-executed special operations mission. Two Black Hawks appeared over the ridge, while ground teams simultaneously breached the compound perimeter at multiple points. The surprise was complete, the coordination flawless. Kira maintained her position, providing overwatch and intelligence as the rescue unfolded. Through her scope, she saw Volkov attempting to reach an escape vehicle during the chaos. She had a clear shot, a chance to eliminate the man who had murdered her father and countless others. Her finger tensed on the trigger, the crosshairs centered on Volkov's chest. Justice was a single pound of pressure away. Yet in that crucial moment, Kira remembered her mission. The hostages came first. Volkov's death would be satisfaction, but the live capture of Viper's leader would save countless future lives. She adjusted her aim and fired, striking him in the shoulder, a disabling wound that sent him crashing to the ground. Within seconds, rescue team members secured him. 30 minutes later, Kira finally descended from her position to rendezvous with Cooper and Commander Chen at the secured compound. The hostages were alive, Volkov was in custody, and a significant blow had been struck against the Viper network. Chen approached her as medics treated a minor cut on her arm. "Godfalcon," he said, using her nickname with newfound respect. "Your father would be proud." "Thank you, sir," she replied quietly. "But I was just doing what he taught me, through Parker. Patience, observation, waiting for the right moment." "There's more to it than that," Chen countered. "Most operators would have taken the shot to kill Volkov. You chose the harder path. Dead men don't talk, sir, and we need him to talk." Chen nodded in agreement. "Hayes was right about you. You see the bigger picture." In the aftermath, intelligence gathered from Volkov and the compound revealed the full extent of the Viper operation. Reynolds had been recruited during his time at Delta, his family's military legacy providing perfect cover for his activities. Disillusioned after his perceived failure in Iraq and humiliated by his struggles during Ghost Protocol training, he had been an easy target for Volkov's manipulation. More importantly, they uncovered plans for operations against other American special operators around the world. The intelligence Kira helped secure would save dozens of lives and ultimately lead to the dismantling of the Viper network. 3 years later, Chief Petty Officer Kira Godfalcon Harlow had become one of the most requested operators for specialized reconnaissance and intelligence-gathering missions. Her reputation had spread throughout the special operations community, and she was frequently called upon for operations that required her unique combination of patience, observation skills, and tactical precision. She had been promoted and selected to lead a small specialized team focusing on high-value intelligence gathering in environments where conventional approaches had failed. Her methodical approach to surveillance had been formalized into training procedures now taught to select operators throughout the Special Forces community. Cooper had become her second-in-command, their partnership growing into deep professional respect. They had completed numerous successful operations together, with Cooper often joking that he was the action to her observation. "You know what I thought when I first met you?" he asked once, after a particularly challenging mission. "I thought you were too quiet, too passive to make it in the teams. Shows what I know." "First impressions aren't always accurate," Kira had replied with a smile. "No, they're not. You've saved more lives with your patience than most operators do with their trigger fingers. That's something to be proud of. During a rare period between deployments, Kira returned to Montana to visit her family. The ranch her father had built was thriving again under her brother's management. Michael had recovered fully from his medical issues and had discovered a talent for business that surprised everyone, expanding the ranch's operations and reputation throughout the region. The financial support from Kira's military career had provided the stability needed during the critical period after their father's death, but Michael's efforts had transformed that temporary solution into sustainable success. "You should see the books," Michael told her proudly during her visit. "We're doing better than ever." Dad would have been amazed. "He would have been proud of you," Kira replied, genuinely impressed by what her brother had accomplished. "You've taken what he built and made it even stronger." "We did it together," Michael insisted. "Your support gave us the time we needed to turn things around. Without that, we would have lost everything." Their mother, Margaret, looked healthier and happier than Kira had seen her in years. The worry lines that had deepened after John Harlow's death had softened, and there was a lightness to her movements that spoke of relief from the crushing financial pressure they had faced. "Your father always said you would find your way," Margaret told Kira one evening as they sat on the porch. "He said you had a purpose, even if you hadn't discovered it yet." "I think I have now," Kira said softly. On her last day before returning to duty, Kira visited her father's grave, placing a small stone on the headstone in the tradition Parker had taught her years ago. "I kept my promise, Dad," she said quietly. "The family is together. The ranch is thriving, and I found my purpose. And Volkov will never hurt anyone again." As she walked back toward her truck, she noticed an elderly figure standing near the cemetery entrance. George Parker waited patiently, leaning slightly on a walking stick, but still standing tall despite his advanced years. "Thought I might find you here," he said as she approached. "Your mother said you were shipping out again tomorrow." "New mission," she confirmed. "Can't talk about it, but it's important." "They always are," he smiled slightly. "Walk with an old man for a bit." They strolled slowly along the path that led away from the cemetery, the Montana landscape stretching out around them, familiar and unchanged despite all that had happened in the years since she first left. "Your mother tells me they call you God Falcon now," Parker said. "Good name. Falcons are patient hunters, observant, precise." The name stuck after a mission a few years back. "My teammate said I circled high above, seeing everything, waiting for the perfect moment." Parker nodded appreciatively. "That's what I tried to teach you all those years ago when we hunted in these hills. Patience isn't just about enduring time, but using it to truly understand what you're observing." They walked in comfortable silence for a while before Parker spoke again. "You know, when I taught you to hunt, I never imagined you'd use those skills quite this way, but I'm proud of how you've applied them." "Those lessons saved my life more than once," Kyra replied, "and the lives of others." As they neared the road where Kira had parked her truck, Parker placed a hand on her arm. "One last piece of advice from an old hunter. The skills I taught you are powerful, but they come with responsibility. Always remember why you're using them." "I will," she promised. "And come back safe. Your family needs you, even if they don't need your financial support anymore." Kyra smiled. "I always come back. I'm very good at what I do." "The best," Parker agreed, "just like I knew you'd be." The next morning, as Kira prepared to leave for her next deployment, her brother handed her a small package. "This came for you yesterday, special courier, military." Inside, she found a new set of insignia reflecting her recent promotion, along with a brief note from Colonel Hayes. "The God Falcon program has been officially approved. Report to Fort Bragg upon completion of your next mission. You're going to train the next generation." Kira felt a surge of pride as she tucked the note into her pocket. What had begun as a desperate attempt to fulfill a promise to her father had evolved into something far more significant. Her unique approach to operations, born from the hunting lessons Parker had taught her in the Montana wilderness, would now become part of the Special Operations community's formal capabilities. As she drove away from her childhood home, Kira thought about the journey that had brought her here. The doubts she had faced, the obstacles overcome, the lessons learned through experience and hardship. Her father would have been proud, not just of her accomplishments, but of how she had achieved them by remaining true to the values he had instilled in her. The road ahead would bring new challenges, new missions where lives and national security would depend on her skills. But she faced that future with the confidence of someone who had found her true calling, applying her unique abilities in service to a purpose greater than herself. Behind her, the rising sun painted the Montana landscape in gold and amber, the light catching on her rearview mirror like the flash of a falcon's wings in flight. The symbolism wasn't lost on her. A new day, a new mission, a continuing journey that had begun with a promise and now extended far beyond it. The god falcon had found her wings, and now she would teach others to fly.